I want to welcome to the program a really interesting guy. I'm sure you've heard a lot about over the years. He is a congressman from the great state of Texas. He's also a doctor. I don't even know whether to call you doctor or congressman, but it's Ronny Jackson nonetheless. Welcome.
Thank you. Just call me Ronnie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it, man. So listen, you've lived an incredibly interesting life, and now you're out with a new book, which to me has got to have some incredible stuff. And I'm just getting started on it, but I can't wait to read it. It's entitled Holding the Line, A Lifetime of Defending Democracy and American Values.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I just came out with it. I never really intended on writing a book. A lot of people had said, "Hey, you got a pretty interesting career." I've been, a doctor. I ended up in the Navy. I ended up at the White House, worked for three administrations, so on and so forth. So all along, people had, really been pushing me. You should write a book at some point. Write a book, and then one day, after I got elected, which also I could talk about later, but I never planned on being a politician. But as soon as you get elected, you go to orientation in DC before you get sworn in, and they have an ethics class, and they go over everything with you. And they say, "Hey, look," they said, "you can't have any other source of income, as a congressman, except for the only exception is you can write a book and you can get royalties or, you get, money from the book that you write." And really, like, be honest with you, most people that come to Congress, a large part of them, they're independently wealthy when they get there. I personally wasn't. I've been living on my Navy salary most of my career, most of my life. So I thought about it, went home, and it was 3 days before we get sworn in. They said the difference is that if you sign a contract before 11:59 on January 3rd, you can get an advance on the book. If you sign a contract after January 3rd, 11:59 on January 3rd, you can't. So I went home and I talked to my wife. She's like, "You should have wrote the book," and she was kind of getting on to me about not doing it. And I said, she said, call Dan Bongino, because Dan's a friend of mine, and Dan had written the book, and I knew he'd written something. So I called Dan, and Dan had his publisher call me the next day. I didn't get a really great advance because, obviously the guy knew I was boxed in. I just had a couple of days to work with, but I got a small advance. But it prompted me to actually write the book. I don't think if that hadn't happened, I would have never really pulled the trigger on it, wrote the book. So I wrote the book. It's out there now. That box is checked. It talks a little bit about my life, growing up, and my time in the Navy, and like I said, my time at the White House, and talks about January 6th, my first few days in Congress, and talks about my nomination for the VA, and there's quite a bit of stuff in there. There's a lot of interesting stories in there. I was privileged to see and hear a lot as the physician for three presidents. So
I got to imagine what was so interesting about your career. First of all, you were in the Navy, you served in Iraq. And all of that, then you come back and you work as a White House physician, which is in multiple administrations, as you say. And so your vantage point is entirely from a nonpartisan point of view, right? And it's not basically until you're done with that you get into politics, as you say. I mean, tell us about sort of your initial onboarding into the White House and what prompted you to serve in a White House as a White House physician.
Well, I didn't even know the job existed, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I guess it makes sense that they have a physician in the White House, but I really didn't know that they had a military physician in the White House. Turns out they had, when I came in, they have more now, but when I came in, they had 6 physicians there, 2 Army, 2 Navy, and 2 Air Force. They were all family practice or internal medicine. They decided that they needed an emergency medicine doc, which was actually, they definitely did. And when I left, they were mostly emergency medicine docs, but they decided they needed an ER doc. So the Navy guy was the most junior. He was the next one rolling out. And so they reached out to the Navy and said, "Hey, give us some packages for some emergency medicine docs." Well, I was in Iraq with the 2nd Marines. I was the officer that was in charge of the resuscitation component of a surgical shock trauma platoon between Fallujah and Ramadi, right on the battlefield.
Wow.
And I just got an email out of nowhere, and it said, "Hey, you've been selected to apply for a job at the White House. Please have your CV, your personal statement, your last 6 performance reports, your security information, your official photo, all this stuff they wanted." And I hadn't been checking that email because it's really difficult to check your email out there. And it was a backup email for me. And when I saw it had been in my box for over a week, maybe 10 days, and I had 5 days to get all that in. So I was like, you know what, this is crazy. This is what a great opportunity, but there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. So I called my wife that night and I was talking to her. She said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, there's no way I'm going to get a package in. I'm out in the middle of the desert." So she had convinced me. She said, "Well, you should try anyways, get as much as you can, because it might be important down the road career-wise." that you were considered for it. So I said, well, that actually makes sense. So I scrambled. I tried to get all my stuff together. I was ginning stuff up electronically out there. She was digging stuff out of the filing cabinet back home. Unbelievably, I got everything in before the deadline, which was just, 5 days away. I got
while you were in Iraq at the time.
Yeah, while I was in Iraq, but I got it all in. But it wasn't, I figured everybody else would have a nice squared away package. Mine was just going to be this big pile of garbage, right? So I figured it really didn't have a snowball's chance in hell. But I got it in. I didn't hear anything for 2.5 months, not a single word, right? So I thought, well, I called my detailer, the guy that controls all the billets in the jobs in the Navy. And he said, I don't know. We turned it over to the White House. We haven't heard anything. So I figured, well, somebody else already got the job. I'm just out in the middle of the desert. I haven't heard anything. And then, like I said, it was 2.5 months in. I kind of stopped checking that email again. I log on there one day. I see in my box, you've been selected as one of 3 people to interview for a job at the White House. Please be in DC for 3 days of interviews. They wanted me there like in 3 days. But I think it was 5 days away. It was like they wanted me there by close of business on Friday.
Takes you 3 days to get home, right?
Exactly, right. So I thought, man, what a great opportunity. I got this far in the process, but I realized this is where the road ends. There's no way in hell I'm going to be in DC, in 5 days. And so I was kind of in the right place at the right time, to be honest with you. And, it's all, I tell people success in life is about being in the right place at the right time to some extent, but also having a certain number of people around you that can see success that you can't see for yourself. And they don't really have anything to gain from your success. And I had a guy like that, the commanding general for all of the Al-Anbar province at the time, for all the Marines in Iraq at the time. Turns out this guy had been the military aide, the guy that carries the nuclear football for President Bush 41, for the senior President Bush. So, at the White
something
House,
about the White House if you got that job.
Yeah, exactly. Because the doctor and the military aide and the Secret Service agent that's in charge of the president's detail, they're what they call the emergency action team. And they're always with the president 24/7, 365, just a few steps away. So this guy had lived with the White House doctor for a couple of years. He knew exactly what I was being asked to do, even though I really didn't. So he summoned me to his office, and I didn't really know the general. He'd come through our tent a few times, our surgical tent, when we were getting casualties, but I didn't really know him very well. But he summoned me to his office. He said, "Tell me what's going on." I told him. He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, sir, there's no way I'm going to be in DC in 5 days. So I'm going to try to do a telecom, maybe a VTC or maybe a telephone interview. I don't know how competitive I'm going to be, but I'm going to give it my best shot." And he said, "Stand by." He picked the phone up. He called the air boss, the guy that controls all the air assets in Iraq. He's talking to him. Last thing he says is, "I want his ass out of here by sunset." And he hangs the phone up. He looks at me and he goes, "Go pack your shit. You're leaving." And I was like, "Yes, sir." So I went back to my hooch and I got my sea bag and I threw some stuff in it. I went out to the flight line. I got on a helicopter, flew to Baghdad. At Baghdad, I got on a C-5 cargo plane full of broken helicopters, flew back to Cherry Point, North Carolina, got a rental car, drove to Virginia Beach, where I was living at the time. And then I was in a little bit of a panic because I was supposed to be at the White House the next day interviewing. For 3 days, I was supposed to wear a business suit for 2 days and then a uniform for a day.
Got to get a suit. Yeah. Got to get a tie out of that deal.
Exactly. Well, when I was in Iraq, I was PTing like all the time when I worked at cash. I lost 40 pounds while I was over there. So I had no clothes that fit. So my wife and I was in a little bit of panic. We went just that night. We drove to the men's warehouse. I bought a new suit. I gave them my sob story. I begged them to tailor it for me on the spot. They hooked me up, made it presentable, brought my uniform in. They helped me with that a little bit. Got back in my rental car, drove to the White House, interviewed for 3 days. At the end of the 3 days, they told me I got the job. I got back on a plane, went back to Iraq, finished my tour for the next 4 months, and then came straight from Iraq to the White House. And that was early 2006. And I was the new junior White House physician for George W. Bush. That's how it all started.
Unbelievable. I mean, that is just an incredible story. And I imagine, I don't know much about your growing up, but I got to imagine nothing would prepare you for actually being a guy that works in the White House at that point.
No, really. I grew up in a hardworking blue collar family. My dad was an electrician. My mom was a homemaker. Nobody in my family even went to college. I was the first one in my family to go to college. And they didn't place a lot of emphasis on higher education either. My dad's attitude was like, you finish high school, you get your butt out and start working and getting some seniority. And that was kind of what was expected of me. But I ended up, going to junior college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Ended up going to Texas A&M at Galveston's marine biology major. I ended up just stumbling into medicine, never really planned on being a doctor, but needed some extra money when I was in school. Went across the street to the medical school to get a job, got a job as an autopsy assistant. I just was thinking I was going to work in a chemistry lab or something. They said, we're going to put you to work in the pathology department as an autopsy assistant. I was like, all right, whatever. So But my job is to do the autopsy.
You're like, do the checks come every 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. And, my job is to like open the body up, take all the organs out, cut the skull off, take the brain out. And I pass it down to the end of the table to the pathology resident. They would dissect everything out, figure out why the person died. But what they started doing is teaching me a little bit. They'd be like, hey, remember that liver you took out yesterday? I was like, yeah, come look at this one. This guy's got liver cancer. See the difference? And I got a little bit interested in medicine. I thought, you know what? I might want to be a doc. It's the first time it ever crossed my mind. Well, I've been a firefighter and I'd worked with paramedics and EMTs. I knew I wanted to be an ER doc if I did it, not a pathologist, but I kind of got interested in it. And then that led me ultimately in going into the military because I didn't have any money to pay for med school. So once I got into med school, then I applied for the military scholarship and I got it. And it's year for year. So 4 years of med school, 4 years of payback. Thought I was going to get in, just do my 4 years payback and then get right back out, be a rich emergency medicine doc somewhere in Texas,
Right.
And, but what happened is I got in there, man, I love my job. I got in and I found out, like I told you, I was a marine biologist and I was big into diving and I spent a lot of time diving. That was my thing. And when I got into the Navy, as soon as they sent me to my first duty station at the Naval Hospital, Portsmouth, Virginia, as soon as the day I graduated from med school, I found out about this program called a diving medical officer where you could be a diver and a doctor. I was like, man, that's like tailor-made for me. So I applied for this program. They sent me straight to Panama City, Florida, put me completely through 6 months of Navy deep sea diving school. I became a fully fledged Navy deep sea diver, walking around on the bottom with the helmet and a hose and everything. But I was also a doctor. So I was a doctor and a diver. So for the next 5 years, they preferentially assigned me to diving units. So I was with the explosive ordnance disposal teams, like underwater demolition type stuff, underwater salvage, Navy SEALs, things like that. And so I spent the next 5 years, it's like jumping out of airplanes, fast jumping out of helicopters, locking out of submarines with the SEALs, blowing stuff up, shooting all kinds of weapons. So I just got hooked on it, man. 4 years came, 4 years went. I never considered getting out of the Navy. And then I ended up doing 25 years of active duty, ultimately retiring as a Navy Rear Admiral from the White House. So it was kind of weird how it all just came together.
I mean,
one thing led to another.
Let me just tell you, it's a long, strange trip from being an autopsy assistant to checking the vitals on a president of the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I got to imagine when you first got there in the White House and the Bush administration, you got to be pretty nervous about that deal, right? I mean, for those of us,
it was different, I came from Iraq, so I was pretty seasoned. There was nothing that could fluster me. As far as when I left that place, I was like, I don't care what comes through the door. I can handle anything that happens because we had some bad injuries out there. We had guys coming in every day with the arms and legs blown off, their bowels hanging out with the viscerations, gray matter hanging out their head, horrible burns. But then I got to the White House and I realized it was also, well, let me just say, when I was in Iraq, a crisis was that, that some of these guys would roll onto my triage pad all at once with their, like I said, their arms and legs blown off. When I got to the White House, a crisis was like, oh my God, I've got the wrong brand of Band-Aids in my bag or something, right? Just as big a deal in some people's mind, but so I had to kind of recalibrate myself. This going from combat medicine to concierge medicine, literally overnight, was kind of a big adjustment.
Oh, I mean, it's got to be the biggest adjustment in the world. I mean, you're seeing combat wounds, then all of a sudden, like a president who's generally in pretty good health anyway, is like you're just walking around seeing if he has a different limp in his step, right?
That's right. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you served in the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Trump administration. And I think where most people got to know you was your time in the Trump administration. And like anybody who had any sort of relationship with the Trump administration during those 4 years, everybody comes after you for one or another. And I got to imagine that was a little disorienting from a guy who basically made his entire living at that point, knowing medicine and knowing the Navy and knowing public service. All of a sudden you're in partisan politics.
Yeah, when you get the Trump stamp on you, man, you better be tough, right? Because they're coming after you. And that's what happened to me. And like you said, I was there that entire time. I was nonpartisan. I was on active duty. So I really didn't get paid to have a political opinion. I got paid to take care of the President of the United States and the office of the president. And I took care of the Secret Service and Air Force One and the President's Helicopter Squadron and Camp David and everybody else that surrounded the president. But that was my job, was the medical part of it. And I didn't, and I was with him at the White House. I was with him anywhere he traveled, whether it was the United States or overseas. I was with him 24/7, 365. I was with him all the time. But what happened is, whenever I did President Trump's physical, I think you remember, that was whenever I really got the Trump stamp. I mean, I was a little bit naive. I didn't really actually realize it until after the fact that was the day that the press decided if they could ever cut my heart out, they were going to do it. right? And so, I got up there, just briefed this physical, really disarmed the press, made the White House press corps look, just like a bunch of idiots, to be honest with you. And it just took all that stuff off the table, because they've been talking about President Trump not being mentally or physically fit to be the president. And there was nothing that caused them to say that, especially on the mental side, except for they didn't like his personality. They didn't like the way he tweeted. They didn't like the nature of his tweets. That was basically it, which I'll compare later, because we have a president right now who's literally an absolute cognitive mess. And where are those people now? Crickets. Nobody.
I was just going to say, if for you, it's got to be a little bit jarring when you've got a guy who's obviously having some trouble in the White House now, and nobody even asks the question.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's ultimately what led me here to be the congressman from the 13th Congressional District of Texas. Because if you remember, after I did that press brief, and I got to know, and the reason I did that, because when President Trump showed up in office, I didn't know him at all. I'd never met him, right? And I was his appointed physician day one. And that was because I made a deal with the transition team that was coming in. They were all Bush folks, and then they moved from the Bush years. They asked me to stay because I was planning to retire. I had all kinds of awesome jobs lined up, and I was leaving. And they said, we need you to stay because we have so many balls in the air, and the White House medical unit is not a problem. We're hitting on all cylinders. Just please stay and see us through the transition. So I said, I'll stay 6 months, not a day longer, and I'm out. And I'll find somebody to replace me that you're happy with. They said, okay, great. So they gave me everything I wanted. I was an appointed physician to the president, and assistant to the president day one. But I didn't really know the president. So I took an opportunity to get to know him. I have an earpiece in every day, and I hear the Secret Service call out, they call out his movements no matter where he's at. They call out every time he moves from one room to another. And they call out in the mornings, that Mogul was on the elevator headed over. Mogul was his call sign. Mogul on the elevator headed downstairs. And so I'd get up because my office was directly below the president's bedroom in the White House proper, right? And so the elevator door that comes from his living quarters opens up right in front of my office door. So he'd come down, and everybody knows him well enough through the media and stuff to know that he's up for about 3 hours before anybody else, shows up at the White House. He's watching TV, tweeting, talking on the phone, whatever. By the time he drops down that elevator, man, he's looking for somebody to talk to, right? So he'd drop down that elevator, and I'd say, good morning, Mr. President. He'd walk over and he'd say, hey, Doc, did you see this? Did you see that? And he'd just strike up a conversation with me. Nothing to do with medicine, right? It would be,
which has got to be super unique, right? I mean, and I can't imagine you had that relationship with previous presidents where you've got a guy who's not asking you anything to do with your job, but just sort of observations of the world at large.
Well, I did. I had casual conversations with the others too, but not to the extent that I did with Trump. Like I said, he was really like looking for somebody to talk to when he came down. I'd talk to the others, the conversations were briefer, maybe a little bit more superficial, but I'd get into some pretty in-depth conversations with President Trump. And I'd start talking, like I said, it would be anything. It could be from Iran to Stormy Daniels, so just whatever was in the news that day, right? Right. And we'd start talking, it'd be like, walk with me. So I'd walk him to work. I'd walk him down the West Colonnade, down the Oval Colonnade, right into the back of the Oval Office. We'd tie up our conversation. The CIA briefer, the chief of staff, the national security advisor, whoever would be in the outer oval waiting to come in. I'd finish up my conversation. I'd walk out, they'd walk in as day would start. And so I just got in the habit of doing that, 3 out of 5 mornings. And I got to know him really well. And I realized right off the bat, I really loved the guy, right? I loved his attitude. I loved his straightforwardness. I just loved his approach to things. And he developed a lot of trust and confidence in me. And then, fast forward, I did his physical about a year later. We'd already got a pretty tight relationship. And then one day I'm on Air Force One. We're coming back from Mar-a-Lago, and he's walking up to the front cabin, and his office and his bedroom in Air Force One is at the very front of the plane. And my space, my medical space where I'm at, is right behind that. So he walks past me and he sees me in there. And he goes, hey, Doc, come up. I got to ask you a question. So he calls me up to his office. So I go up in the Air Force One to his office, and I sit down, and I said, yes, sir. And he goes, I need you to do me a favor. And I said, yes, sir. What do you need? And he goes, I want you to be one of my cabinet secretaries. And I said, what? And I was like, and he goes, I want you to be my VA secretary. And I said, and he goes, you can do it, right? And I go, hey, yeah, I can do it. But where did this come from? And he just was like, Ronny, you're the right guy for the job. You and I talk about veterans issues and about defense and all this stuff all the time. You're a veteran. You got your kids are in the military. He goes, you understand it. You get it. You're not controlled by the lobby or by the $280 billion a year budget, all this other stuff. He said, you're going to do what's best for the vets. And I know it. And you're the right guy for the job. So long story short, he nominates me, go through the nomination process, all that. The press comes after me, they try to tear me down. Deep state Republicans are in on it. They look the other way while I'm getting butchered and so on and so forth. I end up drawing my nomination because I know I'm not going to get nominated. I'm not going to get confirmed in the Senate because I even got some of the Republicans looking the other way and kind of letting it happen. The reason was because they had already picked somebody that they wanted to be the secretary of the VA, somebody that they knew and that they controlled and that they had influence over. I wasn't that guy. when I say they, I mean everybody but the president. President Trump picked me, and so he kind of tipped the apple cart for them, and so they went into damage control and tried to get rid of me. Well, ultimately, I withdrew my nomination, but it led me to a point where I was getting ready to leave the White House. I stayed on. The president asked me to stay on. He promoted me when I first came on. I was deputy assistant to the president, and then he promoted me to assistant to the president, made me chief medical advisor, and wanted me to stay. He didn't want me to leave. So I said, okay, that'd be a nice change. I'll be working on some policy issues. So I did. At that point, I was a little bit political. It was the first time I'd really had anything that was political at the White
Well,
House.
it's hard not to go through that nomination process, even for a day, without becoming political.
Yeah, man. I mean, and so it changed me. You know what I mean? And I used to tell my constituents, man, I was like, the one thing I got to offer, you put me in office, and I said, the one thing I can give you that the other candidates that were running, the Republican primary against me at the time is, I said, I don't give a damn what they say about me anymore. And that's kind of how I am now. It prepared me, it prepared my family, where we can fight the fight. We don't worry about what the press or, what the liberal media or the mainstream media or, anybody says about me. We just push forward. I do what I think is right. I say what I think needs to be said, and I move on. And so it really put me in a good position. But, I decided just out of nowhere at the end of that time, about probably like 8 months after the nomination, after I withdrew my nomination, I said, you know what, I'm not done yet. I had all these job offers. I was making way more money than I'm making now. But I said, I'm not done yet. I'm going to get in the fight. I'm going to do something about what's going on in our country, because I was getting more and more concerned every day about the path that we were taking. And so I did. I ran for office. I filed 2 hours before the filing deadline. And there were already 15 people in the race. But, I got in, I won, and here I am.
It's an amazing story. It's an incredible story from where you started your professional career to where you are now. No question about it. Let me ask you, because I'm sure you work with a lot of really talented doctors in the White House and in Iraq and in your service. When you look at how clearly the press handles President Biden and receiving no questions that you all had during the Trump era, now how difficult is that from a doctor's point of view? If you're a White House physician, knowing that this is not going to be an easy conversation if I'm the one that's standing behind the podium.
Well, it made me angry, and it still does. The double standard, the hypocrisy, right? Because they came after me with everything they had, man. They picked apart every single little detail of everything I said or wrote down. And then Biden gets a complete pass. The guy literally doesn't know where he's at, what he's doing, what day it is. He's confused. He's shuffling around when he walks. He's slurring his speech. He can't even read a teleprompter, and nobody says anything, right? And I kind of got myself in a bind. I burned some of my bridges with President Obama early on in my campaign, because Darren, when he was candidate Joe Biden, I was saying, this guy is not cognitively fit to be our president, our commander in chief, and the leader of the free world. He is not, right? I could tell. I mean, everybody knew it, but nobody was willing to say it at the time. Now everybody's talking about it, which I said they would. But, I basically tweeted out, Ronny McDaniel tweeted something out one day where he was standing up, and he was talking, and he thought he was running for the Senate. He didn't know which state he was in. She tweeted a video of that, and I just retweeted that. And I said, wow, does anybody remember the cognitive test that I gave at real Donald Trump, the one that he aced? Looks like somebody else needs a test. It's scary. That's literally all I said. That was kind of the first shot across the bow as far as tweets go, about me tweeting out about his cognitive stuff. I sent it out within 20 minutes. I was driving to a campaign event in Wichita Falls, Texas. Within 20 minutes, I got, my phone's ding. I get this email, this scathing email from President Obama, just tearing me up, man. He's like, Ronny, I consider you a friend, and this, that, and the other. And a great doctor. I cannot believe the cheap shot you took with Joe. It's beneath you as a Navy Rear Admiral. It's beneath you as a physician to the president. It's a direct assault on me, my family, and my administration, the people that worked with you, and cared about you.
Obama himself sends you this?
Yeah, directly from Obama. Letter straight from him, just tearing me up. I hope you use better judgment in the future and everything. I mean, it was, it kind of, I don't know, it had a weird effect on me, to be honest with you, because it pissed me off a little bit, but it also hurt my feelings just a little bit too. It was a weird kind of emotional thing for me.
Yeah.
I was gonna write him back, and I thought, you know what, I'm not gonna write him back. I'm gonna pick the phone up and call him. I'm just gonna call him. But I was already late for a campaign event, so I rushed into this event. I did this event. I was in there for about an hour and a half. By the time I came out, I had a little bit of time to think about it. So I walked out and I thought, you know what? Before I call him, I'm going to call and talk to somebody and just kind of make sure I kind of go over this in my head so I don't say anything I'm going to regret. So I thought to myself, I'm going to call Dan Bongino, right? Because Dan was a Secret Service agent at the White House with me during the Obama administration. He got out, he got butchered a little bit and ostracized a little bit from the White House and some of the people he had worked with during, and so he kind of gone through what I had gone through. So I said, Dan's going to understand kind of how this makes me feel, right? So I called Dan up and I said, "Hey Dan, what do you think?" And Dan set me straight right off the bat. Dan said, "Ronnie, you don't know this goddamn thing. Don't you even respond to this, man." He goes, "Did that guy do anything to help you? Did he lift one finger when you were getting butchered, during your VA nomination?" He knew that was all garbage. He knew it was all lies. One phone call from that guy to Tester or anybody on the Senate Veterans Affairs or anybody, one phone call from that guy saying this is BS, stand down, it would have been over. But he didn't do anything to help you. He said, "You don't know this guy nothing." And I thought, you know what? He's absolutely right. So I just moved on. I never talked about it, but it's in my book now. So I published it in my book, and that's how it's come out in the last few days in the press, is because I've talked about it in the book.
Amazing bunch of stories. And for anybody who needs to buy this book, who wants a little summer reading, you got to get it. It's Holding the Line, A Lifetime of Defending Democracy and American Values. I can't wait to get through the rest of it. Ronnie, I could talk to you for like 3 hours about these stories. These are fantastic. But I got to ask you 3 big questions that we ask everybody here on the program. All right. I'm interested in this because you've got a real lifetime of experience and probably some time in the White House mess that may inform some of these decisions. But the first question is, if you can plan your last meal on Earth, what would it be?
Well, I can tell you what it won't be. It won't be some of the stuff I ate on the road and on the White House. It won't be a balut, which is a fertilized chicken egg they bury in the ground, or duck egg they bury in the ground for a few months. I ate one of those. I'm never doing that again. Wow. It won't be dog penis when I'm in Korea next time. I ate a whole plate of dog penis one time. Not doing that again. But if I had to plan it, it would probably be fried steak, fried okra, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes, and then followed up by blackberry cobbler with Vanilla Bell ice cream.
Well, you could tell exactly where you're from by that order. I got to tell you, I did not see dog penis coming in this interview. That is another level, my man.
I could write a whole book on some of the strange things I've eaten overseas. I traveled to 120 different countries during my time at the White House, and believe me, we were offered some weird stuff.
I got a feeling you got to have a sequel. It's just sort of a culinary exploration, because that is unbelievable. I've never even heard of that. All right. I got to reset and recalibrate my mind now that I've gone down that road. My second question: if you never got into public service at all, and I'm including your military career in that, and you have this sort of blue sky timeline of 20 years that you can fill it with anything in the world that you would want to do that you haven't done, what do you think it'd be?
Well, I think I probably would have ended up being a marine biologist. I told you I went to Texas A&M. I was a marine biology major. So I think I would have been a marine biologist. I would have moved off to a small island in the South Pacific. And right now I'd be sitting on a beach, white sand, just relaxing on a beach, maybe drinking a Corona and hanging out with the 4 or 5 wives that I would probably have on that part of the country. So that's kind of what I see in my head, but would have been my alternative.
That's a pretty good blue sky right there. I like that, Ronnie. That's good. That's good. I still can't believe you were able to fuse the two of your interest in diving and medicine all in one. I mean, you must have talked about being in the right place at the right time. That's an opportunity that presented specifically for you.
Yep, it was great. It was a great opportunity.
That's awesome. All right. So my third question, you got to follow me a little bit with this one because it's a little esoteric, but our view is that most successful people are motivated by one of 2 things: either the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. And it's not that anybody enjoys losing, right? Or doesn't like winning. It's like what motivates you, right? And the thrill of victory people are always the sunny optimists charging up the hill to the next goal. The agony of defeat people are anybody who fits into that category. Every victory that they've had in life lasts like 5 seconds, but any defeat or major setback that they've had, they carry around like a backpack as a motivation to do better, to work harder, to never put themselves in that situation again, or to achieve basically what people say they can't, right? Those are the 2 poles. Ronnie, where do you find yourself?
So I think anybody that's really successful, probably motivated in large part by both of those, right? And I think I am motivated by, the thrill of, of success for the most part, until I get close to the end. And then I think it's the agony of defeat that drives you forward, and I do take my defeats a lot harder, right? I carry those a lot longer than I do, enjoy my victories. So I would say that I'm probably in the second category a little bit more, but I do enjoy, winning. I do enjoy victory, and I do look forward to that. And that usually motivates me to get started on stuff and to get, 90% of the way down the road of being successful on something. But it's the fear of not finishing, and not closing the loop on stuff and not meeting expectations that probably drives me the last 10, 15%. It drives me usually over the top.
Very well articulated. I got to tell you, the story you told before about going through the nomination process and immediately deciding that you're going to become a congressman, that's an absolute agony of defeat guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
that is
yeah,
that's a perfect
yeah.
one. Like, no way you could take that on the chin if you're an agony of defeat guy and not come back with some retribution, right?
And the good news it's for the American people is I'm still carrying it. I'm not done yet.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna have to deal with me for a while.
I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Well, your book available anywhere you get your books, download or in hard copy. I very much recommend people get it. For any other way to keep up with you, to see what you're up to, you got a website for everybody?
Yeah, we do. Actually, I think it's Ronny Jackson 13 Texas. I'm not real sure, but if you Google online, you can find it. Just Google Ronny Jackson, and you'll find my website. You can go there and keep up with me, and you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook and Truth and all the social media sites.
Well, listen, Congressman Ronny Jackson, fascinating story, fascinating book. Stay in touch. We want to know sort of